All right, let's dive into another deep dive.
Okay.
And today we're going to be looking at something really interesting,
Mm.
um, especially for those of you interested in international relations, maybe prepping for the UPSC exams.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be looking at the kind of boom and bust nature
Yeah.
and even kind of crisis-prone nature of capitalist economies.
Right?
Um, and we're looking at this excerpt on the history and theories behind these economic fluctuations.
Okay.
So get ready to sort of uncover some surprising connections.
Right.
Like, did you know wars can trigger economic downturns?
Interesting.
And was Marx actually right about capitalism's inevitable collapse?
Well, we'll see.
We're going to find out. Stick around. And we've even got a fascinating fact about the Great Depression.
Oh.
That could come in handy for your UPSC exam.
Ah.
So, yeah.
Well, what's interesting to me is how quickly this excerpt kind of challenges this classic idea
Oh.
of market equilibrium that you often find in like liberal economics. You know, the whole Adam Smith invisible hand concept,
Right.
where markets will naturally find a balance.
Yeah.
History paints a much more volatile picture.
Yeah, it's kind of like assuming a roller coaster is just going to glide along a flat track. Right?
Exactly.
This excerpt throws us right back to the South Sea bubble of 1720. Talk about a wild ride.
Yeah.
Thousands of investors bankrupt basically overnight.
The South Sea Bubble is a great example of how even these early forms of capitalism were prone to these really dramatic crashes. And it really sets the stage for understanding this recurring pattern of instability that we see.
Yeah.
That continues even to this day.
So are we saying that like even back then with very early forms of capitalism,
Yes.
this was already baked in a way?
It seems to be this inherent tendency towards instability and fluctuation.
Interesting.
But here's where it gets even more fascinating to me.
Okay.
The link between major wars and subsequent economic downturns.
Oh, so you mean like that whole saying like war is good for the economy?
Right.
This excerpt saying the opposite.
It seems to me that there's a very clear historical pattern here.
Okay.
Think about like the aftermath of the American Revolution, the Napoleonic Wars, conflicts in the mid-19th century.
Yeah.
Both world wars, even Korea and Vietnam.
Wow.
All followed by these periods of economic instability.
But why?
That's a great question.
What's the connection there?
Well, there are a few key factors at play.
Okay.
For one, wars require massive spending, often financed through debt, which can strain government budgets, and divert resources from productive investments.
Okay.
Plus, global trade often gets disrupted during wartime,
Wow.
and then there are the costs of reconstruction afterwards.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So all of this can create a recipe for economic instability.
Right, right.
And this is particularly relevant, I think, for the UPSC syllabus, as it ties into themes of fiscal policy. Right.
Global trade, the impact of conflict on international relations.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Exactly.
Now, this excerpt also delves into Karl Marx and his theories, his ideas on capitalism's instability, especially because of class conflict and these cyclical overproduction crises.
Yeah.
It's often a hot topic in international relations.
It is. Did he get it right?
Well, Marx definitely had a knack for pinpointing capitalism's tendency for volatility. He argued that this constant drive for profit would lead capitalists to exploit workers and overproduce goods, eventually causing the whole system to collapse. It's a compelling narrative. But history tells a slightly different story.
So Marx was wrong about capitalism collapsing.
Well, he wasn't entirely off the mark. Capitalism has certainly experienced its share of crises and recessions, but it's proven to be remarkably resilient, especially because of its capacity for innovation and adaptation, something Marx seems to have underestimated.
So if it's not all about class conflict leading to revolution, what other ways are there to kind of explain these economic ups and downs?
Well, this is where Joseph Schumpeter comes in.
Okay.
With his theory of creative destruction.
Interesting.
It's a really fascinating concept. That builds on some of Marx's ideas, but really focuses on the role of innovation as a driving force of both economic growth and these cyclical fluctuations that we see.
Okay, break that down for me. What is creative destruction?
So imagine a new invention comes along, something revolutionary, like, say, the smartphone. It creates a whole new market, generates jobs, drives economic growth, But in the process, it also disrupts existing industries.
Okay.
Suddenly, companies making traditional cell phones, cameras, even music players, they're facing huge challenges. They have to adapt or risk going out of business.
So is it like a constant process of renewal?
Yes.
Where the old is destroyed to make way for the new?
Yeah, and this process, while ultimately beneficial for the economy in the long run, can be pretty disruptive in the short term.
Yeah.
Leading to those fluctuations and cycles that we see in capitalism.
Right. It's like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. And Schumpeter himself was actually a bit pessimistic.
Oh, really?
About capitalism's long-term survival.
Why is that?
Well, he was concerned about the social and political consequences of the slumps that are part and parcel of this creative destruction.
Right.
He also thought that capitalism's success could ultimately sow the seeds of its own demise.
Interesting.
By creating a class of intellectuals hostile to its principles.
Wow. Okay, so he was a little bit wary.
What we've seen in the post-World War II era, particularly with globalization, suggests that Schumpeter might have underestimated capitalism's knack for continuous reinvention.
So we've got war, we've got class conflict, we've got innovation, all these things kind of contributing to capitalism's roller coaster ride.
Exactly.
But what happens when things go really, really wrong?
Yeah.
Like Great Depression wrong. Is there a breaking point?
The Great Depression of the 1930s, a classic case study.
Right.
Triggered by that infamous Wall Street crash of 1929.
Right.
This is where understanding the nuances of economic history can be so valuable.
Yeah.
Especially for those UPSC aspirants out there.
Yeah. It almost feels like a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
A lesson in what not to do during an economic crisis.
Exactly.
So walk me through this.
Okay.
How did this all unfold?
So it all started with a classic speculative bubble in the 1920s.
Okay.
Share prices in the U.S. were soaring, fueled by easy credit and a belief that the good times would last forever.
Yeah.
But then in 1929, confidence evaporated. Panic selling set in, leading to those infamous days, Black Thursday and Black Tuesday, when the market crashed, sending shockwaves throughout the global economy.
Okay. So a financial meltdown of epic scale.
Yeah.
But did this crash have to turn into a full-blown depression?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
The crash itself was really a consequence of market forces, a classic boom and bust scenario. But what followed was a series of policy blunders that actually made things much, much worse.
So this is where it gets really interesting for our UPSC folks out there.
Exactly.
You need to understand these policy decisions and how they can impact economic outcomes.
Right.
So what were those missteps?
Okay, well, the Hoover administration's initial response was a big one.
Okay.
They clung to a laissez-faire approach.
Okay.
Basically believing that the market would correct itself if left alone.
Okay.
Minimal government intervention was the order of the day.
All right, so that didn't work out too well.
As we know, that didn't work out so well.
So what's the alternative then?
Well, this is where John Maynard Keynes enters the picture with his revolutionary economic ideas.
Yeah.
He argued that governments not only could but should intervene to stabilize the economy, especially during times of recession or depression.
So instead of just letting the economy free fall, Keynes is saying, hey, the government can do something to soften the blow.
Exactly.
This seems pretty radical for the time.
It was a significant departure from the prevailing economic wisdom.
Yeah.
Keynes advocated for what we call fiscal policy, using government spending and taxation to influence the economy. He argued that during a recession, the government should increase spending or cut taxes to stimulate demand and get people back to work.
So did anyone actually put these Keynesian ideas into practice?
To a limited extent, yes. In the U.S., President Roosevelt's New Deal implemented some Keynesian principles, but even he was hesitant to fully embrace deficit spending.
Interesting.
Interestingly, Germany's recovery from the Depression was partly fueled by what some economists call inadvertent Keynesianism.
Inadvertent Keynesianism? Yeah. What does that even mean?
So it refers to the fact that Germany's rearmament under the Nazi regime, while obviously driven by sinister motives, ended up having a Keynesian effect. The massive increase in military spending, regardless of its purpose, injected money into the economy, stimulated demand, and reduced unemployment. It's a fascinating example of how economic policies can have unintended consequences.
Right.
Something that's always worth considering.
For sure.
Especially when studying history for the UPSC.
So a bit of a surprising twist.
Yeah.
Rearmament unintentionally helping an economy recover.
Right.
Something for our UPSC aspirants to ponder, for sure.
Sure.
But getting back to the Great Depression, were there other policy missteps?
Absolutely.
That kind of deepened the crisis?
Another major one was the rise of what are called beggar-thy-neighbor policies.
Okay, beggar-thy-neighbor.
Yeah.
That sounds not very neighborly.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
These policies aim to boost a country's own economy at the expense of others.
Boop.
They might seem logical in isolation, but when every country adopts them, they can collectively worsen the global economic situation.
So it's like everyone trying to pull themselves up by pushing everyone else down.
Exactly.
A recipe for disaster, it seems.
Yeah. What were some examples?
What were some examples of these policies?
Well, one example was fiscal deflation. Governments cutting spending and raising taxes to reduce the demand for imports. The idea was to protect domestic industries, but it also reduced overall demand, which hurt economic activity both domestically and globally.
So like almost trying to fix a leaky faucet by turning off the water to the whole house.
Exactly. Another example was competitive devaluation, where countries intentionally devalued their currencies to make their exports cheaper and more competitive. But when everyone does this, it triggers a race to the bottom, which can destabilize the whole global financial system.
Oh, wow.
So
it's just cycle.
Yeah. The third major beggar-thy-neighbor policy was protectionism. Countries raised tariffs on imports, thinking they were protecting their own industries from foreign competition. But this just choked off international trade. And further deepened the global economic downturn.
Wow.
The Great Depression really highlights the dangers of economic nationalism and the importance of international cooperation for global stability.
So it sounds like the world learned some hard lessons from the Great Depression. Did things change after that?
They certainly did, and that's where we'll pick up after a short break. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll explore how the world responded to these challenges, the Great Depression.
Sounds good.
And what lessons we can draw for today's increasingly interconnected global economy.
I'm looking forward to it. Welcome back.
Yeah, it did indeed. The Great Depression, followed by the devastation of World War II, it made it abundantly clear that a new approach to global economic governance was needed. Countries couldn't just act in their own self-interest anymore. They needed to find ways to cooperate and coordinate their actions.
So what emerged from this need for a new world order, economically speaking?
Well, one of the most significant developments was the establishment of the Bretton Woods system in 1944. This was a landmark agreement among the major world powers, with the goal of creating a more stable and predictable international monetary system. It's a key topic for anyone studying international relations, especially for the UPSC exams.
Bretton Woods. That name rings a bell.
Yeah.
Wasn't it like the blueprint for the global economy after World War II?
Exactly. The Bretton Woods system essentially pegged currencies to the U.S. dollar, which at the time was linked to gold. And this system helped stabilize exchange rates and encourage international trade.
So it was all about cooperation and creating a more level playing field for the global economy.
To a large extent, yes. And it worked pretty well for a while. The Bretton Woods era saw unprecedented economic growth and globalization. But like any system, it wasn't without its flaws. And eventually faced challenges that led to its collapse in the early 1970s.
Hold on. This system that was designed to create stability ultimately collapsed.
It did. What happened? Well, there were a number of contributing factors. One was the growing U.S. trade deficit, which put pressure on the dollar. As the U.S. economy struggled, so did the dollar. And that put a strain on the entire Bretton Woods system.
It makes sense if the anchor of the system weakens. The whole thing becomes unstable.
Exactly.
What else contributed to its downfall?
Another key factor was the increasing mobility of capital. thanks in part to advances in technology and communication,
Right.
money could move across borders much more easily, making it harder for governments to maintain those fixed exchange rates.
Right.
It was like trying to control a river with a leaky dam.
So the world was changing?
Yeah.
And the system just couldn't keep up.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And then came the final blow.
Okay.
In 1971, President Nixon decided to uncouple the dollar from gold.
Wow.
This effectively ended the Bretton Woods system and marked a shift towards a more flexible exchange rate system.
Okay, so Bretton Woods collapses.
Yeah.
Did the world descend into economic chaos?
Not at all.
Okay.
While the collapse did create uncertainty, it also paved the way for new forms of economic cooperation.
Okay.
The world adapted, as it often does.
Right.
For example, the G7, a group of the world's leading industrialized nations, emerged as a forum for coordinating economic policies.
So the G7 stepped in to kind of fill the void left by Bretton Woods.
Yeah, what about those global institutions created at Bretton Woods?
Yeah.
The IMF and the World Bank?
Yeah, did they just fade away?
Not a chance.
Okay.
They actually adapted to the changing landscape and continued to play vital roles.
Okay.
The IMF shifted its focus from managing exchange rates to providing financial assistance to countries facing balance of payments crises. The World Bank, on the other hand, expanded its lending activities to support development projects in developing countries.
Right.
They both remain key players in the global economy today.
So even though the Bretton Woods system itself didn't last, its legacy lives on through these institutions.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it also highlights, I think, this key characteristic of global capitalism.
Right.
Its capacity for evolution and adaptation.
Right.
The system is constantly responding to crises.
Yeah.
Adapting to new realities, and hopefully learning from its mistakes.
But we can't just assume that this evolution is always positive or equitable.
Right, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
We can't ignore the downsides. We're seeing rising income inequality, concerns about job displacement, and environmental degradation as a result of globalization. Right. These are serious issues that need to be addressed.
So how do we move forward?
That's a great question.
How do we make globalization work for everyone?
Yeah.
Not just a select few.
Right.
What does the future hold for global capitalism?
Those are the million-dollar questions.
Yeah.
And that's what we'll delve into in part 3.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into global capitalism.
Yes.
We've covered a lot of ground from the inherent instability of the system to those lessons learned from past crises like the Great Depression.
Yeah.
But let's shift our focus to the future.
Okay.
What are those major forces shaping global capitalism today?
Well, the global landscape is transforming in some pretty dramatic ways right before our eyes. We're seeing the rise of new economic powerhouses, the rapid advancement of technology, and the looming threat of climate change.
Right.
These are all interconnected forces that are reshaping the world as we know it.
So let's break it down.
Okay.
Starting with the rise of new economic powers. China's economic transformation over the past few decades. It's been nothing short of remarkable.
It really is one of the most significant economic shifts in modern history.
It's gone from a largely agrarian society to this global manufacturing and technological powerhouse.
Exactly. And it's not just China. India, with its massive and young population, is also emerging as a major force in the global economy.
And this shift in economic power has significant implications for international relations.
It does.
Especially for those preparing for the UPSC exams.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what does this shift in economic power mean for the established players like the U.S. and Europe?
Yeah.
Is it a zero-sum game? Or one country's gain is another's loss?
That's a question that's been hotly debated. Some argue that the rise of China and India represents a direct challenge to the West, leading to increased economic competition, potentially even conflict. Others see it as an opportunity for collaboration and mutual benefit, a chance to build a more multipolar world where power is more evenly distributed.
So instead of viewing it as a threat,
Yeah.
It could be an opportunity for everyone to kind of grow together.
Exactly.
Okay.
The challenge lies in finding ways to manage this transition smoothly
Right.
and ensure that it leads to a more stable and prosperous world for all.
Mm-hmm.
it requires a shift from a mindset of competition
Yeah.
to one of cooperation.
Okay.
Not just between nations,
Right.
but also between governments, businesses, civil society.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Now, at the same time as this geopolitical power shift is happening, technology is advancing at an incredible pace.
It is.
Artificial intelligence, automation, Internet of Things, it's almost overwhelming.
It's a period of rapid technological transformation, no doubt.
Yeah, and it's got profound implications for the future of global capitalism.
Absolutely. On one hand,
technology has the potential to boost productivity, create new industries, improve living standards worldwide.
Right.
But it also presents some serious challenges.
I can see that technology can be both a blessing and a curse.
Precisely.
Right.
There are concerns about job displacement as automation takes over tasks previously done by humans.
Right.
There's also the risk of widening inequality as the benefits of those technological advancements accrue disproportionately to those who already have wealth and access.
Yeah.
And then there are the broader ethical and societal implications of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And the increasing power of these tech giants.
Right.
Which are important considerations for anyone interested in the future of global governance.
So it's like, we need to find a way to harness the power of technology for good.
Yeah.
While mitigating its potential negative consequences.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Finding that balance is going to be crucial. And now, let's not forget about the biggest challenge of all, climate change.
Right. The elephant in the room.
Yes. It's impossible to talk about the future of global capitalism without acknowledging the climate crisis.
Absolutely.
The way we produce, consume, and generate energy has a profound impact on the planet. We need to transition to a low-carbon economy, one that's resilient to the impacts of climate change. And this transition will require a fundamental shift in our thinking and our actions.
That's not just about economic growth anymore.
Right.
It's about sustainable growth.
Exactly.
Ensuring a future where both people and the planet can thrive.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And this is where the conversation about global capitalism gets really interesting.
Okay.
How do we balance economic growth with environmental sustainability?
Right.
How do we create a system that's both prosperous and just?
Yeah.
These are the questions we need to grapple with if we want to create a better future.
It's a daunting task, for sure.
It is.
But it's also an opportunity to reimagine and reshape our world.
Exactly. And this is where you, our listeners, come in. This isn't just a passive listening experience.
Right.
We want you to engage with these ideas, to think critically, to be part of the solution.
Yeah, what insights resonated with you?
Yeah, what questions did we raise?
How can you apply this knowledge to your own lives and careers?
Especially for those of you preparing for the UPSC exams.
Right.
We hope this deep dive has provided a framework for understanding these complexities of international relations in an era of such rapid change.
Whether you're a student, a professional, or just curious citizen.
Yes.
Understanding global capitalism is crucial.
It is.
For navigating the world today.
Absolutely.
We've explored the history, the challenges, the possibilities.
Right.
The story of global capitalism is still being written.
Yeah.
And the ending is far from certain.
That's right.
It's up to all of us to shape the future.
It is.
We want to see.
So stay curious, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions.
Absolutely.
Remember, the future is not something that happens to us. It's something we create.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive into global capitalism, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends.
Please do.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
See you.